Welcome, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Mary Ann Hensley, and I'm the Vice President of Marketing here at FreightWaves, and we are happy to present today's webinar in partnership with TriumphPay. Today, we'll be exploring the payment process and how companies can work to select the payment strategy that's best for their organizations. We'll be hearing insights from a couple of amazing speakers today. First is Melissa Foreman, Senior Vice President and Chief Operations Officer for TriumphPay. Melissa has a unique blend of experience in sales, operations, technology, and finance in the transportation industry, and actually works very closely with the second guest who's going to be joining us today, and that's Joe Gramps, who is the Chief Financial Officer for 5-Star Trucking. Joe and Melissa will both be sharing their insights, and we'll have a live Q&A with both speakers following the presentation, so be sure to get your questions ready for them. Before we get started, I'd just like to cover a couple of housekeeping items. First, if you have any issues during the webinar, please feel free to reach out to our team via the chat function on your Zoom webinar control panel. Also, if you have questions that you would like to ask our presenters, please enter those through the Q&A box in your control panel, and we'll answer as many of those as we have time for during the live audience Q&A following the speaker presentations. And at this point, I will go ahead and turn it over to Melissa.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Mary Ann, for the introduction, and thank you to everybody on the call today who's joining us to cover the exciting topic of the current state of carrier payments. We appreciate the opportunity to spend the next hour with all of you. And again, special thanks, as Mary Ann mentioned, Joe Grams with 5-Star Trucking is joining us, and he's going to be able to share his insights as well. We're excited to have him on the call. So who am I, right? I'm Melissa Foreman. I got introduced to transportation back in 2005, just by chance, as an Oracle database analyst with TriumphPay Services, who's now Pegasus Transtech. In that role, I supported their driver log auditing solution, and like many of you, that's where my love for transportation began. So once you're in this space, it truly becomes ingrained in your DNA. During my time with TriumphPay, I had the opportunity to work with some of the largest organizations in the industry, such as Werner, Schneider, Swift, U.S. Express, Covenant, and many more, in all aspects of their business, including safety, billing and payroll, and driver recruiting and onboarding. As such, I was able to witness the inefficiencies that fragmentation causes in the supply chain. The next 7.5 years, I spent working with a leading factoring company, eCapital, where I was able to take what I learned from large carriers and work to develop solutions that allow small carriers and brokers to compete in the marketplace with tools to empower them to be both efficient and profitable. You can't be in this industry for over 16 years without developing a deep passion to perpetually innovate and bring additional solutions, which brings me to my current role with TriumphPay, where we're delivering a mutual beneficial solution to carriers and brokers and transforming the industry. So enough about me. Let's talk about what you can expect to get out of our session today. One is how payments have transformed over time. We'll take a little history lesson over the last 15 or so years. The current mix of carrier payments, carrier experience and loyalty, and managing carrier payments internally versus leveraging a platform solution. 15 years ago, I'd venture to say that 90 to 95% of all your original paperwork was delivered via USPS and FedEx. The TriumphPay drop boxes revolutionized how you could cost-effectively reduce your DSO by receiving either your original to their overnight services or via images and value-added data processing that you see come in today. And then Apple, iPhone, and Android devices came on the scene, empowering our industry to revolutionize the paper process even further. Although image quality from these tools had improved to the point of usability for us several years ago, our industry has been slow to adopt. That is, until the recent ELD mandate forced us to take another look. With the industry ready to embrace the capabilities of technology and our drivers actually willing to use it, we have seen an abundance of leading innovations out there capitalizing on emerging technologies. Today, there are countless apps for carriers to use to manage their work, in addition to all the traditional methods that are still in use today. While we have become a little more efficient, we're still fragmented and have begun to experience app fatigue. So with that said, what do payments look like today? In brokered freight, 43% of payments are factored, 50% are paid on standard terms, and 7% are paid utilizing a broker's QuickPay program. Did you know that carriers are 6 times more likely to factor an invoice than utilize a broker's QuickPay program? So why are they choosing to factor? The answer is pretty simple when you really break it down. Carriers need cash flow to operate a highly cost-intensive business. They need fuel to make truck and insurance payments, pay their drivers and maintenance expenses, all before they get paid. In today's market, only 60% of brokers offer some sort of QuickPay, but are not actively marketing it to carriers, either because they do not have the tools to efficiently manage it, or they are also being compressed by long pay terms from their customers. Those brokers that do have programs are typically charging 3 to 5%, which is cost prohibitive for carriers and not competitive with today's factoring rate. Carriers can work with as many as 100 brokers a year, 100 different credit checks, 100 different sets of rules for invoice submission, 100 different companies to get payment status and collection efforts on. With 85% of carriers operating 10 trucks or less, they do not have the administrative staff or technology tools to support these efforts. So they've turned to factoring companies for help, especially those who have developed innovative solutions through portals and apps that provide critical services to smaller carriers and brokers. Not only do they give them cash flow, but function as the carrier's outsourced AR department. Everyone is talking about driving carrier loyalty to reduce onboarding costs, improve quality, and limit one-and-done carrier interactions. So how do you do that? You have to understand your carrier's pain and what it is that they need solved. They have no flexibility to effectively manage and control their cash flow. They do not have robust tools and staff larger carriers have access to manage their AR department. They work with a myriad of rules and requirements that they must follow to be paid timely, which leads us to what they want. In addition to fair market rates on their loads, and a lot of them, they also need the ability to control their costs, access to cost-effective QuickPay solutions with a technology platform that provides a single solution interface with online portal and mobile app capabilities that makes working with all of their brokers easy. The payments process of the future will give carriers, brokers, and factors the ability to achieve all of these goals. Now I'd like to take a moment to introduce Joe Graham, CFO and President of 5 Star Trucking. Joe and his team have been a TriumphPay client since April of 2018, and we have worked together to pay more than 2,400 of his carriers and process over $15 million in carrier payments as an extension of his accounts payable team. Joe, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So Joe, if you could give me a moment, could you speak to the transition process your team had as they adopted TriumphPay? What were some of the fears and concerns that outsourcing your AP your team had?
Sure. So, I think the biggest concern was, how does it affect the relationship with the carrier? And, one of the nice things about TriumphPay is, you have the ability to still be as hands-on or hands-off as you wish. The carrier has access to all the payment information and that through the TriumphPay portal. So if you're able to get them to utilize that, it can drastically reduce the number of calls, to your back office staff answering, hey, when am I going to get paid? And all those sorts of things. And also, as far as managing the QuickPays and all that, the carrier has the option to elect all that through the portal. So if they have any questions, they can contact the TriumphPay staff, and they can assist them through that. So that's one of the things that we saw in the transition. And I would say that that's a nice thing, right? Because some carriers, you may not be able to get them to call TriumphPay to offload some of that, or you may want to maintain that closer relationship. Other ones are happy to do it, and then it just, lessens that volume, call volume, you know, to your back office.
That's great, Joe. Thank you. After the transition, and since we've been at this a year now, what have you seen the experience look like now that you have more and more carriers adopting the TriumphPay solution? Are you continuing to see the call volumes go down?
Yeah, I would say so. And I think, you know, the benefits are, there's several of them. You know, at the time that we decided to implement it, we we didn't have a good way to offer ACH payments, and so TriumphPay provided that. But an additional kind of benefit to that was we didn't have to maintain the carrier's banking information and make changes to that and monitor all that, because that's all handled in the TriumphPay portal. So carrier, you know, if they change a bank and all those things, that's done self-service through TriumphPay, and so we don't have to worry about you know, that financial information getting out or any of those kind of things. And, you know, TriumphPay is part of a bank that has all the, you know, security you'd expect around that data. So, you know, it's a good peace of mind that I don't have to worry about keeping all that stuff under lock and key, changing it when there's a change. And then the other big benefit is from a productivity standpoint, you know, we're sending out significantly fewer checks, so saving postage there, saving check stock cost, saving envelope stuffing time, you know, and that all adds up, especially as your volume increases. So to be able to get that time back to, you know, do something a little more value add has been a really nice benefit.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Most importantly, I think for everybody here on the call is, you know, what are you hearing from your carriers? How have they expressed their satisfaction or dissatisfaction with the TriumphPay process? I know at the very beginning, as an early adopter, it was a little bit new for everybody, but what are your carriers saying?
I would say that they're you know, generally happy with the platform. Like I said, it gives them better visibility into when they're going to get paid, so they don't necessarily, you know, either they or the factoring company doesn't have to call us to get that information. They can log in, see all of our payments, you know, pending payments and when they're due to be paid, you know, and because they have the ability to elect QuickPay on a individual load basis if they choose, you know, if they say, hey, I could really use this money on this one load, they can go in there and elect that. That's a nice benefit as well. You know, and I think, you know, obviously it's kind of up to the TriumphPay customer, but generally they're going to see lower QuickPay rates than they would factoring rates, at least the way we have things set up. So I think that's a benefit as well.
Awesome. So it allows you to be a little bit more competitive in your space. Good. All right, Joe, thank you so much for that. Everybody, Joe will be available at the end of the call to be able to answer any questions that you may have for him and his specific experience. So please write them down and be ready to get after him when we get to the end. All right, so Joe mentioned some of the efficiencies gained by adopting a platform-based QuickPay solution for his carriers. The first step of improving your carrier experience, though, is making sure that your processes for them are easy to follow and creating an environment where your AP team can focus on the most critical aspects of their job. So you have to ask yourself, you know, are you easy for a carrier to work with? What we found in an independent survey is that 90% of brokers don't offer a portal or apps for document submission or payment status inquiries. And that's both to their drivers and to the factoring companies who, as we saw earlier, are highly invested in this process, given that 43% of payments are going through them. Additionally, for every $100 million in revenue, it's projected that your AP team is taking over 15,000 calls a year regarding load verification, payment status, remittance information, you know, who's supposed to get paid from both your carrier partners and your factoring partners. So what does it mean to manage your carrier payments in-house versus leveraging a platform solution? It means being able to provide visibility to all three players in the process, and that's brokers, carriers, and factoring companies. For the broker, you have to be able to provide payment visibility to the carriers, which will allow them, as Joe mentioned, to self-serve. You need to be able to receive your paperwork quicker to reduce your DSO and improve your ability to bill your customers so that you can get paid faster. From the carrier's perspective, they need to be able to see their payments, submit their invoices, manage all their customers in one place. Remember, we talked about app fatigue earlier, where there are so many different tools or apps that they can use, they don't know where to go. Again, that's why factoring companies play such a critical role. They also need to be able to request a QuickPay when they need it. From the factor's perspective, they need to be able to effectively and efficiently place their NOAs, their notice of assignment. They need to be able to receive payment statuses, inquire on collection issues, and have load verification tools to help them make their processes more efficient as well. Using a platform-based solution such as TriumphPay allows you to reallocate some of your costs to your core competencies and revenue-generating activities, eliminate check and ACH costs, manage your factor relationships more effectively, and improve your revenue generated by your QuickPay program, keeping your carriers loyal. The one piece that I've not spent any time on is the additional liquidity or cash flow available to you as a broker. When you leverage our funds, again, we are a bank, to offer QuickPay to your carriers, you still have the opportunity to pay at standard terms, but your carriers have instant access to the cash. All of this can be done off of your balance sheet. Through our TMS and accounting system integration partners, as well as custom developed solutions, we're able to do this with no cost to the broker and typically 2% or less QuickPay fees to the carrier when they choose to get paid fast. So moving forward, what are some of the key takeaways here? You want your carriers to be able to take control of their finances through an easy platform that allows them to manage their customers, get paid fast with a cost-effective solution when they need it, and drive carrier loyalty. You want to be able to work with your factoring partners to be able to improve the experience between them so that you can give them the data they need to also be able to pay their carriers. At TriumphPay, we provide the back office processing and platform effect to give brokers, carriers, and factors the visibility they need to efficiently manage their respective businesses. We help you build carrier loyalty so that you have stronger relationships and increase the broker's cash flow at no cost. So there's a test that you can take, excuse me, to determine whether or not you are easy to work with, if you have the most effective solutions in place, and if you're maximizing on your investments within your organization. This little test is going to be available on our LinkedIn page, so you'll be able to access it as well as the rest of the presentation after this is over. So take this back, talk to your accounts payable departments, talk to your CFOs, talk to your sales team, and see if your carriers are happy with how they're doing business with you, or if there's any way that you can improve it, improve their experience, improve your cash flow, and reduce your costs. So at that, I would like to take a moment to hand it back off to Mary Ann for the fun part. We're looking forward to being able to address any questions that you come up with, and hopefully we'll be able to get through them all. Thank you guys for joining us today. Mary Ann?
Awesome. Thanks so much, Melissa, and to you, Joe, for being here and for sharing your perspectives today. As Melissa said, at this point, we just really like to open the floor to audience Q&A. So if you've not already submitted your questions, please do so through the Q&A button in your control panel. First question, I believe for you, Melissa. As a broker, we're concerned with secondary payments due to double brokering. How do you handle these types of issues?
Sure, that's a great question. So the way the process works with TriumphPay, you're still doing your verification on the front end. So you're ensuring that the payments are being applied appropriately, that the loads are actually have been delivered with no claims, no OS&D. And once you approve payment, that's when the transaction comes to TriumphPay to make it available to the carriers to be able to select the QuickPay.
Great. And then next question is a bit more around how the program works. It says it sounds like there may be a gain share concept. Can you expand on this? And how does TriumphPay receive my data?
Two very good questions. So the first one in terms of gain share. So at TriumphPay, we work with each broker individually to come up with a custom solution that works for them and their carriers. As I mentioned, we like to see that the QuickPay fee is less than 2%. We want to make sure that it's cost effective for the carrier, but we also know that that's where adoption begins to really jump up. When you have a QuickPay fee that's greater than 2%, adoption goes down. So you want to make sure that it's very competitive. And what we do at TriumphPay is we will revenue share a portion of that QuickPay fee back to the broker, and that's how you realize additional revenue, is through a higher adoption rate if you already have a program in place. On average, we see around 23 to 25% across our platform of QuickPay adoption. So it's really able to drive that revenue. In terms of getting your data, we have integrations with some of the largest TMS providers out there, as well as accounting systems. So we're able to plug into your current process today, either through already built integrations or by custom developing one on the fly for you. But it hooks right into your data, so your process on the front end doesn't have to change. We're able to take that feed from the technology you already have and provide the platform for your carriers and factors to use.
Okay, great. And is TriumphPay available for shippers, and is it as effective for shippers as it is for brokers?
Absolutely. It is definitely available for shippers. A big portion of what shippers do is obviously move their product out into the market. And we see that the freight spend for a shipper is a perfect opportunity for us to be able to integrate with those systems as well and handle the carrier payment process. Especially because in the shipper market, the carrier payment piece of that is not the focus of what they're doing, right? So any help that they can get to be able to improve that customer experience certainly is beneficial for creating that loyalty and managing those payments for them.
Okay, great. And this question for Joe, it says, how many FTE were in your AP department dedicated to carrier pay before and after partnering with Triumph? I assume it's talking about full-time employees.
Yes. So, I mean, essentially we had, I would say, 1.5, and now it's strictly one person. And, you know, I would say there's probably the ability to get to maybe like a half full-time employee ultimately, but there's that's more around kind of the document processing. If we were able to streamline that a little more, I think we could achieve even greater efficiency there too.
Okay, perfect. And then for Melissa, what are Triumph's pay terms? Is it payment from ship date or receipt of POD?
The pay terms are actually defined by the broker or shipper themselves. They can determine when and how they want to pay the carriers. So if your standard pay terms are 30 days and you send us a payable, an invoice that needs to go out, you tell us what day to pay it on. If for some reason you had some exception with that particular invoice or carrier where there was some delay on your side before sending it to us, we'll actually make that payment on the date you tell us, even if that's 15 days out or 10 days out. So you really have the ability to control, as the broker, control what those payment terms are and make any exceptions that you feel necessary in order to support your carrier base.
Okay, great. And then for Joe, are your truck finders closing with carriers easier or faster when, sorry, I'm trying to navigate. Are your truck finders closing with carriers easier or faster when carriers learn you're partnering with TriumphPay? In other words, are you making fewer calls to find capacity?
Yeah, I think that's something that's a little hard to measure, right? But I would say that, and especially when we started with TriumphPay, it itself was new as well. But I would say we've definitely seen an increase in the, reoccurring carriers once they've gotten familiar with the process, and they like it because it's something that not all brokers are able to offer. So, I do think that is a positive selling point and something that we've seen.
Okay, great. And Melissa, how does Triumph deal with some of the larger companies that are extending pay terms to 90 or 120 days?
Yep. So on a case-by-case basis, and I know that sounds a little too granular, but on a case-by-case basis, we're able to evaluate the shippers or our customers that are delaying those terms. And based on our broker's credit, we're able to extend additional credit terms for them. So for example, if you had a particular customer that was paying at 90 days and you needed us to be able to pay your carrier at 30, but extend that timeout for you to pay, that's something that we can build into our model.
Okay, great. And then for Joe, can you speak to the implementation and transition to TriumphPay that your company went through? Is it cost prohibitive to implement, and will it cause disruption to my business?
So, and I would say our situation was probably a little more unique than most because we helped TriumphPay get that integration with the TMS up and running. So, if you're using a TMS that they're already integrated with, you obviously wouldn't have the same process, and I would imagine it would be quicker. But even still, when we decided to go live with it, we did not experience any kind of disruption in our business or any issues as far as that goes. I mean, maybe there was a learning curve of, hey, we want to make sure we can verify that all the loads that we processed were actually processed the way they needed to be. So we may have been taken a little more time to, check those things out. But yeah, there was definitely no disruption, in the business as far as that goes.
Okay, perfect. For Melissa, how are factors working on reducing cases where their clients are double brokering loads and not paying the hauling parties? Is that something you can speak to?
Just from previous experience working with a factoring company, really having the chain of custody on the documentation and being able to efficiently do load verification is the best tool that they have to be able to mitigate double brokering. It's still a pretty manual process right now because of the fragmentation in the industry. But making sure that your paperwork as the broker clearly identifies the carrier of record, and when the paperwork comes into the factor, they're ensuring that the carrier who delivered it is who is on the paperwork. I hope that helps. Okay,
great. And then Melissa, can you share a bit about your client base in terms of brokers versus shippers versus spend under management, the breakdown of that?
So right now on our platform, it's 100% brokers. We are working in the shipper market to increase that and, obviously get clients on that side. As I mentioned earlier, from the shipper's perspective, the freight spend is such a small portion of their business that their priorities are just, typically focused elsewhere. However, the solution is perfect for them to be able to help manage that. So right now it's all 100% brokers, and we have over 150 brokers on our platform today.
Okay, great. Still got a few additional questions for Melissa. If you have questions for Joe, feel free to send those in through your Q&A button. Next for Melissa, for shippers that are interested in it, can Triumph provide freight invoice audit services? Is that something that's in your portfolio?
Yep, absolutely. So we have partnered with a company called Intelligent Audit. They are a leading freight audit and payment company in the industry. We've partnered together because With the recent news of the IPS Worldwide bankruptcy, who was a freight audit and pay company that was not backed by a bank, the fear in the industry is that the payments aren't safe. And so Intelligent Audit has partnered with TriumphPay and Intelligent Payments, one of our DBA, to go with that solution to be able to bring a safe, secure solution into the shipper market where freight audit is part of the solution with fully integrated carrier payments built into their technology. So with Intelligent Audit clients, they're able to see all the payment status and information within the Intelligent Audit app. It's 100% integrated.
Okay, great. And how does a broker know if a carrier has chosen QuickPay for one load?
The broker, it really isn't of concern for them, but however, they can see it. So the TriumphPay platform allows the broker to have access and visibility to see everything that's going on with the carrier payments. So they can log in and see what's happening. In terms of the QuickPay itself, because we're using Triumph's cash in order to fund that QuickPay, the broker doesn't get billed for that or doesn't pay for that invoice until the due date. So it's out there for the carrier. If they have a situation, and we know what happens, where you may have a carrier where you don't want to have access to a QuickPay, maybe something came up after you submitted the payment over to us where you have a claim on another load and you're trying to get that resolved. You do have the ability to go in and change elections for specific carriers to not allow them access to the QuickPay, as well as change payment dates and amounts of the invoice up until the point in which we remit it.
Okay, great. And then talking a bit about kind of the overall control, how does TriumphPay impact the broker's leverage or control over the process?
We don't. So you have complete control as the broker. As I mentioned, we will not make any payments on your behalf until you tell us to do so. And let's say your payment terms, again, are scheduled at 30 days out. You have the ability to change that through the TMS integration. Again, you're not having to pick up the phone and call us and talk to us about it. You can just submit an adjustment through the technology to change your remittance instructions to us. So if you're telling us to pay the carrier on the 21st and now you need us to pay them on the 15th, as long as it's before that, we can make that change. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, great. And then a bit about kind of the general user experience. Can you talk a bit about what TriumphPay support looks like once a broker goes live?
Yes, absolutely. So our customer service team is located here in Dallas in our corporate headquarters. And carriers have the ability to communicate with us either through the technology itself, so they have access to their own version of the platform where they can see all of their brokers that are on the platform and manage their payments accordingly. So they can communicate and make changes through that. They can call our help desk, and we have a team staffed here to be able to answer their calls Monday through Friday. We also have the ability to live chat. And if they send an email, a ticket gets created automatically, and our SLA is to get those addressed, within a few minutes.
Okay, great. And then can you kind of tag onto that question? Can you speak a bit to the work that's done prior to a company going live with the solution?
No, that's great. So the biggest part is obviously establishing that trust, with the broker. Your team has to feel comfortable that the carriers, your most valued asset, is being taken care of. And so we spend a lot of time on the front end, meeting with you on site. Kate Juliao, our VP of Operations, will come on site and spend time with your team, your AP team, and make sure that they understand the solution, understand how to use the platform. There's a couple different communications that can be sent out to your carrier base prior to go live. And certainly our integrations team, Paul Dillon, who's our senior sales engineer, is on site working with your technology team if necessary, or our technology partners, to get that integration set up and running. It's fully tested, obviously, before we go live. We want to make sure that there's no errors in the payment process. And usually, in addition to the pre-meetings where we're on site with you, we'll come out on the day that you go live just to have an extra level of support and comfort that you've got people available for you immediately if any questions come up.
All right, perfect. And another question, can a 3PL be set up on a portal or have visibility into what carriers you are currently set up with?
So a 3PL would have access to only see their carriers. We want to make sure that the platform is keeping everybody's information, secure, that we're not sharing data across customers or across carriers. So if you have a carrier that has been onboarded into your system and you send that carrier over to us, you will be able to see that carrier within your system, but only for the loads that they're hauling for you. That security is very important to us, and we want to make sure that we protect all of our client and carrier data.
Okay, great. And kind of tacking on to that a bit on the security aspect. You mentioned the IPS worldwide bankruptcy. Can you talk a bit about what makes Triumph a safe, secure payment processing solution?
Yes, so we are a subsidiary of Triumph Bank Corp. We are traded on NASDAQ under the ticker TBK, so we're a publicly traded company. Because of the fact that we're a bank, we have to abide by payment transmitter regulations, and so we have to make sure that your funds are always kept separate and not commingled in other funds. And so as part of SOX compliance, Sarbanes-Oxley compliance, and all the other examiners that come in throughout the year to make sure that everything is running smooth here at the bank, we can ensure that your funds are protected.
Okay, awesome. And then one for Joe, talking a bit about the transition once again to TriumphPay. I know a lot of times with larger organizations, especially, you kind of get caught up in some of these legacy mentalities. It's tough to change just because people are used to doing things a certain way for a long period of time. Can you talk about any challenges that you might have faced in that area and how people can kind of work to overcome those to really see the benefit of a different solution like this?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I can speak to in that regard specifically was, I said we have essentially or had about 1.5 people full-time working in that realm, and the one that has been doing that for us for over 20 years, so obviously very comfortable in what she's been used to doing and how she does things. So this was a big change because it got a big chunk of her time back, like I said, because she's not printing checks, stuffing envelopes, mailing them, those kind of things. And so I had said far in advance of all this is, hey, I think it's important to communicate why you're doing it as a business, what the benefits are, and be transparent with that. And we certainly did that, but there was still some hesitation, like am I going to lose my job because of this, and those kind of things. And I think the key to all that is truly communication and do a good job to lay out that business case as to why it makes sense and why it's beneficial, and that it's not going to have any broader consequences than that. I think that's really the best advice I can give as far as how to approach that.
Awesome, thank you. And then for Melissa, are there any extra steps that would need to be made for the system to merge with a factoring company's clients or carriers payable compared to a broker's?
Yeah, so we have API technology or functionality to where we would be able to create a connection to a factoring company if they wanted to be able to get payment status. Even in some cases through the TMSs, we have load data. So load verification, automated load verification is a possibility for the factoring company to be able to help, reduce their costs to manage their business. So yeah, we have API capabilities and would love the opportunity to connect with a factoring company and be able to automate that piece for them.
Awesome. And then a bit about kind of the geography that you cover, specifically Canada. What does the Canadian landscape currently look like from a TriumphPay perspective, both on the broker front as well as the carrier front?
Yep, so today we are processing payments only in U.S. currency. And so as long as the transaction is happening within U.S. currency, we're able to process it.
Okay, perfect.
But Canada is soon to come.
Excellent. All right, and then for Joe, as a longtime TriumphPay customer, what advice would you give to a broker looking to develop their QuickPay program?
I'm not quite sure the context of what they're looking for, but I mean, I would say, if it's a matter of why we chose TriumphPay, I spoke to a little bit of this. It's extending our cash flow, because anyone that chooses QuickPay essentially doesn't come out of our bank until the regular 30-day terms would hit. So that's a big plus to us. Obviously, we were able to offer a lower QuickPay rate as a result of that, which is a big plus, I think, to the carriers and us to get that adoption. And like I said, all the operational efficiencies and kind of security, not having to maintain all that financial data and the risks associated with all that. Those are all things I think that came into our decision to move forward with TriumphPay. And I will say we did reduce our QuickPay rate as a result of moving to TriumphPay. In order to get better adoption, because I think, you could, let's say you're charging 5%, you could switch to TriumphPay, still charge 5%. You'd probably get the same number of QuickPays, but it's not going to increase. And I think the real value in that is to be able to get more carriers to, adopt it without a significant, a large financial burden on their end too, because you want that to be a mutually beneficial relationship.
Yeah, makes sense. And back to you, Melissa. When and how does TriumphPay draw from my account to be reimbursed for funding a QuickPay transaction?
Yep, absolutely. So I'll talk about the two types of transactions. So there's a standard pay transaction where the carrier has not elected to take a QuickPay. In that scenario, let's say your payment terms were at 30 days. If your payment terms are at 30 days, on day 29, we're going to draft your account for all the payments that are due on the 30th day. So we withdraw on day 29, and on day 30, those payments are remitted out to the carriers based on their payment preference, whether that's ACH, check, or wire. In the case of a QuickPay, we would send the funds out to the carrier the day that they elected it, assuming that the Fed ACH cutoffs haven't expired. So we send that out on, let's say, day 1. On day 30, we are then going to draft your account to recoup the funds that we had sent out to that carrier on day 1. The carrier has the ability to elect QuickPay all the way up until the payment date. So if they chose at day 15, maybe they broke down, they need to buy a tire, whatever is going on, they're going on vacation, whatever's happening, they have the ability to select the QuickPay all the way through the payment process date.
Can I add one thing in there too, along those lines? It's kind of related. One of the other things that we found very helpful is once you've sent off, you're processing invoices as you get them. Once you've sent off that data to TriumphPay through their portal on the broker side, you see the next 30 days of, essentially what your purchase transportation is going to be. And so from a cash flow management perspective, it's really nice because at a glance, you could see it any one day. That's typically the largest spend you'll have as a broker, you can see, you know, I need to make sure I have this amount of cash on these dates because these are the days where, you know, a lot of payments are going to be going out. So depending on what your process is to process that, I think that's a pretty nice benefit as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks, Joe. And then Melissa, kind of specific to systems, are there specific accounting or TMS systems that a company needs to be integrated with in order to work with TriumphPay?
No, absolutely not. So we have a development team on staff that can work. You may have a custom grown TMS or a new TMS provider or somebody we're not already integrated with. We'll do one of two things. We can either develop the integration ourselves to your custom solution, or we can work with your TMS or accounting system provider directly to build that integration with them. So there's a lot of flexibility in how we make that happen.
Okay, great. And can you share a bit about how TriumphPay impacts the factoring side of transportation?
Sure, absolutely. So from a factoring perspective, they work with brokers, or they work with carriers and buy their invoices. And so they're sending notice of assignments out to the brokers and shippers, letting them know that they need to be paid for those invoices because they have bought them, that they have that rights to their receivables. So through TriumphPay, rather than those notifications or remittance information or verification calls going to the broker directly, it goes to our operations center here in Dallas, and our team is highly trained in factoring, you know, regulations so that we can ensure that notice of assignments are put in place properly or removed properly so that we don't have misdirected payments. So that the work of handling those transactions and the risk associated with doing it incorrectly falls back on TriumphPay to make sure that it's done properly.
Awesome. And then kind of a tack on to that in terms of the systems. If we're with a standard TMS system, who pays for the integration to the TMS provider and who pays for your resources to implement?
We do.
Great. Excellent. And just a couple more questions. If there are any of you out there that still have burning questions and have not submitted those, go ahead and do so now. Melissa, what are the payment terms for QuickPay?
You know what? Again, that is a custom solution that will work with each individual broker to determine what works best for their carrier base. Typically, we see carriers on our platform paying at 21 or 30 days. The QuickPay terms are usually same day. You can also create multiple levels of QuickPay terms where you can have a same day option, a 2-day option, you know, however you want to extend that out, 7-day option where you are charging lower QuickPay fees based on the timing that the carrier is requesting to get paid. It's all customizable.
Awesome. Perfect. And it looks like one last question here, which is a good one to wrap up with. How quickly can brokers get set up with TriumphPay and how easy is it to get started?
Awesome. So it is a very, very simple process in order to get started. Obviously, we have a sales team that would be able to first listen to your business and see what it is you're trying to achieve within your strategy, whether you're looking to increase revenue through a QuickPay program or increase your liquidity and cash flow. We can customize the solution that makes sense for you. Once we have that identified, you then do an application process where our underwriters would be able to determine the available credit we would be able to establish for you. And then from that point forward, we would have our integrations team start working on identifying, you know, how we're going to integrate with you, if it's an already developed solution that's plug and play, or if we would be able to or need to create a custom solution for you. Obviously, I can't speak to the timing on a custom solution because you never know, you know, what those are going to look like once you get in there. But within a few weeks, we're typically able to get you onboarded and live. There is a payment processing agreement that would go out that just kind of goes over the payment processing terms, and responsibilities that would have to be signed and put in place as well.
All right, perfect. Well, it looks like we have pretty much covered everything today. Thank you so much to Melissa and to Joe for being here today and sharing your insights. Thanks so much to those of you who are dialed in for being such active participants. Tons of questions came through today. So it looks like we really struck a chord and hopefully provided some extremely helpful information for you to kind of help guide your business decisions moving forward. So we really appreciate you all for being here, and thanks again to TriumphPay for partnering with us on today's webinar. We hope you all will join us again soon. Take care.
Thank you.